The vastness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, silent and empty, yet filled with countless secrets. Among the endless stars, a lone human exploration ship, the Horizon's Edge, moved steadily through the Andromeda expanse. It was one of humanity's most advanced ships, built for deep space travel, carrying a crew of explorers, scientists, and engineers. Captain Elias Carter stood on the bridge, arms crossed, staring at the glowing control panels. His ship had picked up something unusual, a weak distress signal coming from an unknown vessel. "Still no response?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Lieutenant Sarah Owens shook her head. "No, Captain. The signal keeps repeating, but there's no reply. The ship is not moving. It might be abandoned." Carter exhaled slowly. "Or someone's in trouble," he said. "Bring us closer. Let's get a visual." The crew obeyed, and within minutes, the mysterious ship appeared on their main screen. It was small, sleek, and unlike anything the humans had seen before. The hull was made of a strange silver material that shimmered under the distant starlight. The design was elegant, almost too perfect. Nothing like humanity's more rugged, heavily armored ships. "That's not any known human design," said Chief Engineer Darius Cole. "Looks advanced, but small." Owens nodded. "I'm scanning now. Only one life sign aboard. Weak but stable." Carter made his decision instantly. "Prepare a boarding team. If someone's alive in there, we're bringing them back." A mysterious rescue. Minutes later, Carter, Owens, and 2 security officers stepped into the airlock of the Horizon's Edge. The mysterious ship was too damaged to dock properly, so they used small thrusters to reach it. As they approached, the ship's surface looked smooth but scarred with deep burns, probably from an attack. The entry hatch was jammed, but Owens managed to bypass the system, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the ship was dimly lit, with faint blue lights flickering along the walls. It was eerily silent. Then they saw her. Lying on the floor near what looked like the control panel was a young alien girl. She had smooth violet skin, long silver hair, and delicate features that looked almost human. But her eyes, even closed, seemed larger, her ears slightly pointed. She wore a thin metallic suit, now torn in places. "She's alive," Owens confirmed after a quick scan, "but unconscious." Carter knelt beside her. "Let's get her back. Fast." Carefully, they carried the alien girl back to the Horizon's Edge, unaware that this moment would change everything. The awakening. Hours later, the girl awoke in the ship's medical bay. The soft hum of machines filled the air as she slowly opened her eyes. Her vision was blurry at first, but then she saw them. Humans. She sat up quickly, her body tense. Her gaze darted around the room, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. A human man stood before her, watching her with calm, steady eyes. He had dark hair, a strong build, and a uniform that marked him as the leader. "I'm Captain Elias Carter," he said gently. "You're safe." She stared at him, confused, her mind racing. The Velari, her people, had always spoken of humans as a primitive species, still struggling to find their place in the stars. Yet here she was, on a human ship, alive because of them. My ship," she murmured, her voice soft but musical. "We found it," Carter said. "It was badly damaged. You were the only one aboard." The girl's violet eyes darkened with worry. She took a deep breath, then looked around again. The room was large, filled with complex machines she didn't recognize. And then she noticed something through the glass wall behind the captain. A massive structure. Her breath caught in her throat. Through the window, she saw a part of the Horizon's Edge, its colossal hull stretching into the distance, far larger than anything her people had ever built. "That's really big," she whispered, almost in awe. Carter and the others exchanged glances. Her reaction was strange. Why was she so shocked? "You've never seen a ship this size before?" Owens asked. The alien girl shook her head slowly. We don't build them like this. Valari ships are small, elegant, but this... She looked back at Carter, her expression unreadable. This is impossible. Carter chuckled, folding his arms. Well, for humans, it's just another ship. She stared at him again, as if reevaluating everything she had ever believed. The first step into the unknown. Over the next few hours, the crew learned her name, Zyra. She was a scientist, traveling alone when something attacked her vessel. She didn't know who the attackers were, only that they had appeared suddenly and without warning. As she spoke with Carter and his crew, one thought kept circling in her mind. Humans were supposed to be behind the Valari in technology and progress. Yet here they were, with their enormous ship, their advanced systems, and their confidence. Zyra realized something unsettling. Perhaps her people had underestimated humanity. And perhaps that was a mistake. Zyra sat quietly in the medical bay, her violet eyes scanning the room. The humans had treated her injuries with surprising efficiency, and now she felt much better. But her mind was restless. She was on a human ship, something she had never imagined. Her people, the Valari, had always spoken of humans as a young, reckless species, still struggling to understand the universe. They were not supposed to have technology that rivaled, let alone surpassed, the Valari. Yet here she was, and the ship she was on was massive. The humans called it a Horizon's Edge, and it was unlike anything Zyra had ever seen. Valari ships were small, sleek, and efficient, designed for fast travel and quick maneuvering. They never built anything big. It was considered unnecessary. But humans, they built giants. A tour of the impossible. Captain Elias Carter entered the room, his expression calm but curious. "Feeling better?" he asked. Zyra hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Carter studied her for a moment. "Would you like to see more of the ship?" Zyra wasn't sure how to respond. She shouldn't be here, shouldn't be interacting with humans. But her curiosity was stronger than her fear. "Yes," she finally said. Carter led her through the corridors of the Horizon's Edge, and with every step, Zyra felt her understanding of the universe shift. The ship's hallways stretched far beyond what she thought possible. The ceilings were high, the walls reinforced with layers of metal and energy shielding. Doors slid open with a soft hiss as they passed, revealing control rooms, laboratories, massive storage bays, and weapons she had never seen before. "This ship is over 4 kilometers long," Carter said casually. Zyra stopped walking. She stared at him in shock. 4 kilometers. Carter raised an eyebrow. "That's small for a human exploration vessel. Our warships are much bigger." Zyra's mind reeled. Her people had never built anything on this scale. The largest Valari ships were no more than a few hundred meters long. They relied on stealth and speed, believing that smaller ships were better. But humans, they built for strength. They built for endurance. "You don't fear the weight?" she asked, struggling to understand. "What if something goes wrong? If a system fails? A ship this big, it's dangerous." Carter chuckled. "We plan for failure. Every system has backups, and those backups have backups. If something breaks, we fix it. If we can't fix it, we adapt." Zyra fell silent. This was not how the Valari thought. Her people feared risk. If a ship was damaged beyond repair, the crew abandoned it. If a situation was too dangerous, they retreated. They relied on caution and prediction to avoid problems before they happened. But humans, they faced problems head-on and solved them. The engineering bay. Awe and disbelief. Carter led Zyra into the engineering bay, and she froze. Before her stood a colossal reactor core, glowing with contained energy. Thick cables and reinforced conduits stretched in every direction. Dozens of engineers moved around, checking systems, repairing components, and monitoring power levels. Zyra's heart pounded. This level of raw power, it was overwhelming. The Valari used compact, delicate power sources, Their ships relied on efficiency. But this was brute force. "You power the entire ship with this?" she asked in disbelief. Carter nodded. "This reactor could power 3 ships this size if needed." Zira felt small. Her people had always considered themselves technologically superior. But now she wasn't so sure. Weapons that shouldn't exist. They continued their tour, reaching the weapons bay. Zira had seen Valeri weapons, small precise energy cannons meant for disabling enemies, not destroying them. But when she saw the human weapons, she stared in shock. Massive railguns lined the walls, each capable of firing hyper-accelerated projectiles that could rip through entire warships. Missile launchers, laser turrets, and experimental plasma cannons, all ready for battle. Zira turned to Carter, her voice almost a whisper. "You built these for war." Carter's expression grew serious. "We built them to survive." Zira swallowed hard. The Valeri saw war as something to avoid at all costs. Their technology was meant to evade conflict, to escape if necessary. But humans, they prepared for the worst. A new perspective. As they walked back to the main deck, Zira felt overwhelmed. Everything she thought she knew about humans had been wrong. She had been taught that humans were reckless, emotional, and primitive. But what she saw today, humans were brave, adaptable, and relentless. They didn't just explore space, they conquered it. They built ships that couldn't be ignored, weapons that couldn't be underestimated, and they never backed down from a challenge. She looked at Carter with newfound respect, and maybe a little fear. Her people had underestimated humanity, and she now realized that might have been a terrible mistake. Zira sat in the Horizon's Edge's command center, her mind struggling to process everything she had learned. She had always believed that the Valeri were the most advanced species in this part of the galaxy. Her people prided themselves on their elegant technology, superior intelligence, and careful strategies. Yet these humans had built something beyond her imagination. A ship so massive, so powerful, that it could change the balance of power in the galaxy. But it wasn't just the ship, it was the humans themselves. A different kind of strength. As she watched the crew work, she noticed something strange. The humans laughed, joked, and spoke casually, even in the middle of their duties. This was not how the Valeri operated. Her people were always calm, precise, and formal. They avoided unnecessary risks. Every action was carefully calculated. Mistakes were rare, and when they happened, the Valeri analyzed them, seeking a logical solution. But these humans, they embraced chaos. An engineer dropped a tool, and instead of panic, he laughed and picked it up. A young officer made an error on the navigation system, and the captain simply corrected him with a smile. Humans learned from failure, and they didn't fear it. Zira had heard stories of human adaptability, but now she was seeing it firsthand. If something broke, they fixed it. If a plan failed, they made a new one. If they faced danger, they stood their ground. This was why they had built such massive ships. This was why they survived where others failed. Curiosity beyond limits. Captain Elias Carter walked over to her, noticing her deep thought. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he joked. Zira hesitated, then spoke honestly. "You humans, you are not what I expected." Carter smirked. "I hear that a lot." She turned to him, her violet eyes full of curiosity. "Why do you build ships this big? Why do you push your limits like this?" Carter crossed his arms and looked out at the massive view of space beyond the command center's glass window. "Because we never stop," he said. "Humans don't settle. We don't just exist. We explore, we create, we build. Every time we reach a limit, we break through it." Zira listened carefully. This was not how the Valeri thought. Her people were satisfied with their knowledge. They saw the universe as something to be understood, not challenged. But humans, they saw the universe as something to conquer. A story of survival. Carter continued, You know, humans weren't always like this. Thousands of years ago, we were weak. We didn't have the best weapons. We didn't have natural armor or strength. We were just small creatures trying to survive. But we had one thing other creatures didn't. Zira raised an eyebrow. What was that? Carter smiled. We never gave up. He leaned against the control panel, looking at the endless void of space. On Earth, there were creatures stronger than us, faster than us. But humans, we outlasted them. We adapted. We learned to use tools, then fire, then machines. We survived disasters, wars, and everything the universe threw at us. And now, he gestured around the massive ship. Now we fly among the stars. Zira was silent. She felt small in that moment. Her people had always believed they were above humanity. But now she realized humans had earned their place in the universe, not by being the smartest or the strongest, but by never giving up. A newfound respect. A sudden alarm cut through the air. "Captain," a voice called out. Long-range scanners just detected something. Carter turned toward the screen as the crew rushed to their stations. Zira watched, heart pounding. "What is it?" Carter asked. Lieutenant Owens checked the readings. Her expression grew serious. "It's a fleet. Unidentified ships. They're moving fast, toward us." Zira felt a chill run through her body. She had seen these signals before. "The HFY," she whispered. The command center went quiet. Carter turned to her. "You know them." She nodded slowly. "They are hunters, conquerors. My people avoid them at all costs. If they have found us." She hesitated, then looked at him. "We need to run." But Carter didn't move. Instead, he smiled. "Run." He shook his head. "That's not how humans do things." Zira stared at him. "But the HFY are dangerous. They will destroy us." Carter's eyes gleamed with something she couldn't quite understand. Confidence. "Let them try," he said. "Humanity stands its ground." The crew sprang into action. Shields were raised, weapons powered up, and battle stations were manned. Zira watched in disbelief. The Velari would have fled. But the humans, they were preparing for a fight. Zira couldn't understand it. Why weren't they afraid? Why weren't they running? She turned to Carter. "Why? Why do you fight when you can escape?" Carter looked at her, his expression serious now. "Because if we run today, we'll have to run tomorrow. And the day after that. Eventually, we'll run out of places to run." He turned back to the screen, watching as the enemy fleet drew closer. "Humans don't run. We stand. We fight. We win." Zira felt something strange. Respect. She had spent her life believing that the Velari were superior, that humans were just another species trying to survive. But now she saw the truth. Humanity was something else entirely. And for the first time in her life, Zira wanted to see what would happen next. The alarm blared through the horizon's edge, filling the massive ship with an urgent sense of danger. The HFY fleet was closing in fast, their warships casting long shadows against the distant starlight. Zira's breath quickened. The Velari had always avoided the HFY, fleeing at the first sign of their presence. Even a single HFY warship was a nightmare to deal with. But here, the humans were outnumbered 10-1. And they still refused to run. She turned to Captain Carter, hoping he would reconsider. "It's not too late," she said urgently. "We can escape before they engage." But Carter simply smiled, a calm, unwavering expression that made her uneasy. "You don't understand, Zira," he said, stepping forward. "This isn't just about survival. It's about sending a message." Zira narrowed her eyes. "What message?" Carter's voice was firm. "That humanity doesn't bow to tyrants. A strategy of madness." The crew moved with precision, manning their stations, weapons powered up, energy shields activated, and targeting systems locked onto the incoming enemy fleet. Zira shook her head in disbelief. "You can't win this. There are too many of them." Carter's second-in-command, Lieutenant Owens, smirked. "That's what they think too." Zira watched as the battle strategy unfolded on the holo display. Instead of retreating or forming a defensive line, the humans had chosen something different, something reckless, something insane. Zira gasped. "You're going to attack first." Carter nodded. "We hit them hard before they can react. It's called a preemptive strike." Zira couldn't believe what she was hearing. The Veilari never struck first. They always analyzed, planned, and retreated when necessary. But humans made the first move. The battle begins. A deep hum echoed through the ship as the railguns charged. On the screen, Zira could see the HFY fleet moving into formation, their massive warships spreading out like predators surrounding their prey. But they weren't expecting what happened next. "Fire," Carter commanded. A deafening boom shook the horizon's edge as the ship's main railguns unleashed their fury. The first Sci-Fi warship never had a chance. The projectile struck its core with unimaginable force, ripping through its armor like paper. A second shot followed, and in an instant, the mighty warship erupted into fire and debris. Zira's eyes widened. Impossible. The HFY fleet hesitated for a moment, clearly shocked by the unexpected destruction of one of their own. That was all the time the humans needed. Missiles launched in synchronized waves, plasma cannons fired at key targets, and the human ship moved aggressively, pushing forward rather than retreating. The HFY finally reacted, unleashing their own firepower, but the horizon's edge was already ahead of them. Zira gripped the side of the control panel as the ship shook from the impact of enemy fire. But instead of panic, she saw something incredible. The humans fought harder. They didn't flinch. They didn't hesitate. Even as explosions rumbled in the distance, the crew adjusted their tactics, working together with absolute determination. A warrior's spirit. Zira felt something stirring inside her, a strange admiration. She had never seen anyone fight like this before. The Veilari relied on strategy and careful calculations, but humans, they relied on sheer willpower. She turned to Carter, who was barking orders like a true commander, leading his people with unshakable confidence. He knew they were outnumbered. He knew the odds were against them. And yet, he stood fearless. Zira had thought humans were reckless. But now she saw the truth. Humans were relentless. Turning the tide, the battle raged on, but something unexpected was happening. The HFY were losing. The humans outmaneuvered them, using their superior speed and firepower to strike at weak points. One by one, the enemy warships fell apart, unable to withstand the relentless assault. Zira watched in awe as the HFY fleet began to retreat. "They're running," she whispered. Carter folded his arms. That's what happens when bullies realize they're not the strongest ones in the fight. A new understanding. As the last of the HFY ships fled into the void, the horizon's edge stood victorious. The crew erupted into cheers, celebrating their triumph. Zira, however, remained silent. She had spent her life believing her people were the superior species, more advanced, more intelligent, more careful. But today, she had seen something else. She had seen a species that refused to surrender. A species that, against all odds, stood its ground and won. She turned to Carter, finally understanding the truth. "You humans, you're different." Carter smirked. "Yeah, we get that a lot." Zira looked out into the vastness of space, her mind racing. The Veilari had always believed that avoiding war was the key to survival. But now she saw something different. Maybe survival wasn't just about avoiding conflict. Maybe it was about standing up and fighting for something greater. And for the first time in her life, Zira wanted to fight alongside them. The battlefield was quiet now. Where once the HFY fleet had loomed like a dark storm, now there was only debris drifting through space, the shattered remains of warships that had dared to challenge the horizon's edge. Zira stood near the large viewing window, her violet eyes scanning the wreckage. The battle had been won, but she felt a strange heaviness in her chest. Humans had fought fiercely, without hesitation, without fear. Their tactics had been bold, almost reckless, but in the end, they had overcome the impossible. Still, victory had come at a price. The wounds of war. Captain Carter stepped into the command center, wiping soot and sweat from his brow. His uniform was slightly torn, and there was a small cut on his forehead, but he barely seemed to notice. "Status report," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. Lieutenant Owens checked the ship's systems. "Shields are at 20%, railguns need reloading, and we took some damage to the outer hull, but we're still operational." Carter nodded. "Casualties?" There was a pause. 7 dead, 19 injured, Owens said quietly. Zira's chest tightened. 7 dead. She had seen wars before, but she had never been close enough to feel the weight of it. Valari commanders never engaged directly in battles. They made cold, calculated decisions from a distance. But Carter, he had been on the bridge, fighting alongside his crew. He had risked his own life. And now, even in victory, he felt the loss. Human grit. Zira approached him carefully. "I'm sorry for your losses," she said. The words felt strange on her tongue. Valari leaders never apologize for casualties. They saw soldiers as expendable resources. But when she looked at Carter, she saw something different. "They knew the risks," he said, his voice steady but filled with unspoken pain. "They fought because they believed in something greater than themselves. That's what it means to be human." Zira frowned. "You mean to die for your people?" Carter shook his head. "Not just to die. To fight, to protect, to push forward, even when everything seems impossible." Zira had never thought of war that way before. The Valari avoided conflict whenever possible, retreating from danger, prioritizing self-preservation over all else. But humans, they faced danger head-on. And now Zira realized why they were different, why they won. Aftermath. The medical bay was filled with wounded crew members. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged systems. Every human moved with purpose, despite their exhaustion. Zira had always thought of war as something that only brought destruction. But here, she saw unity. She saw humans helping each other, lifting one another up, standing side by side. She had seen them fight with relentless aggression. But now, she saw another side of them, the side that cared. A doctor rushed past her, carrying medical supplies. Another crew member sat on a bench, his face bruised, but he was laughing with a friend, as if he had already forgotten the pain. They had lost people, but they had also saved each other. A hard truth. Zira turned back to Carter, who was looking over the latest battle reports. "You're different from the Valari," she admitted. "We would never risk this much. We would never fight like this." Carter raised an eyebrow. "And yet, we're still here." Zira hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, that's why you won. Not just because of your weapons or your ship. You won because you refused to give up." Carter smirked. "You're finally starting to understand." Zira took a deep breath. "And now, I wonder if my people have been wrong all along." A new path. For the first time in her life, Zira questioned everything she had been taught. The Valari believed they were superior because of their intelligence, their technology, their careful planning. But what if they had been wrong? What if in their effort to preserve themselves, they had missed something greater? What if true strength was not in avoiding danger, but in facing it? Zira looked at Carter, the man who had defied the odds and won, and she made a decision. "I want to learn more about your people," she said. Carter chuckled. "I had a feeling you'd say that." Zira met his gaze, her determination clear. "I want to fight beside you." The hum of the ship's engines filled the silent corridors. The battle was over, but the horizon's edge still carried the weight of its victory. The scars of war ran deep, damaged hull plates, flickering lights, the quiet absence of those who had fallen. Zira walked through the ship, her mind heavy with new thoughts. The Valeri had always taught that war was to be avoided at all costs. That survival meant staying away from conflict. But now, she wasn't sure anymore. The offer. She found Captain Carter in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays of battle reports and fleet movements. Despite the exhaustion on his face, his eyes were sharp, focused, determined. Zira took a deep breath. I meant what I said. Carter glanced up. About what? About fighting beside you. For the first time, hesitation flickered across Carter's face. You're not human, Zira. This isn't your war. She met his gaze. Maybe not, but I've seen what's out there. I've seen what the Telfar do. And I've seen how humans fight back. Carter studied her for a moment. If you do this, there's no going back. The Valeri won't see you the same way. Zira knew he was right. If she fought with the humans, her people might consider her a traitor. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what her people thought. I need to do this, she said firmly. Carter sighed, then smirked. Well, you've got guts. I'll give you that. Training begins. Zira was intelligent, agile, and skilled in Valeri tactics, but human combat training was completely different from anything she had learned. Sergeant Reynolds, a battle-hardened soldier with grizzled features and a no-nonsense attitude, was assigned to train her. All right, alien girl, Reynolds said, tossing her a training rifle. Let's see what you've got. Zira caught the weapon, adjusting her grip. I'm not completely new to combat. Reynolds grinned. Good, then you won't mind a little pressure. The next few hours were brutal. Human training focused on instinct and adaptability. It wasn't just about knowing when to shoot. It was about reacting to danger in split seconds, about working together, about pushing beyond exhaustion. Zira was fast, but the humans were relentless. Every time she thought she had mastered something, Reynolds pushed her harder. Move faster, he barked as she weaved through an obstacle course. Your enemy won't wait for you to be ready. Zira gritted her teeth. Her body ached, her lungs burned, but she refused to give up. She wasn't just training, she was proving herself. And when she finally hit every moving target in the simulation, she saw Reynolds nod in approval. Not bad, alien, he said. Not bad at all. The first mission. Zira barely had time to recover before the next challenge arrived. A distress signal had come in from a human colony on the outer rim. Zelfar raiders had attacked, and the remaining civilians were trapped in the settlement. This is what we do, Carter told Zira as the team prepared for deployment. We don't just fight for survival, we fight for those who can't defend themselves. Zira's heart pounded as she stepped onto the dropship, her new human comrades securing their weapons around her. She wasn't just observing this time. This time, she was one of them. The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere. Through the small window, Zira saw smoke rising from the colony below, flashes of energy weapons lighting up the streets. Her hands clenched around her rifle. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. The landing. The dropship touched down with a heavy thud. The doors hissed open, and the squad rushed forward. Gunfire echoed through the ruined streets. The Zelfar were still there, their tall, insectoid forms moving through the shadows. Cover the civilians, Carter ordered. Zira stayed close to Reynolds, moving with the squad as they advanced through the wreckage. A Zelfar soldier emerged from the smoke, raising a plasma rifle. Zira didn't hesitate. Her shot hit first. The Zelfar fell, and for a moment, Zira stared at the weapon in her hands. She had fought before, but this was different. This was for something greater. Nice shot, Reynolds said, but don't stop now. Zira nodded, pushing forward. A choice made. The battle was fierce, but the humans fought with their usual defiance. They took losses, but they never backed down. Zira fought beside them, moving instinctively, covering her allies, holding the line. When the HFY finally retreated, the survivors of the colony emerged from hiding, their faces filled with gratitude. Zira watched as Carter helped an injured child to his feet, offering a reassuring smile. This was why they fought. Not for conquest, not for power, but to protect. As the team regrouped, Reynolds clapped Zira on the back. Not bad for your first real fight. Zira exhaled, wiping sweat from her brow. It won't be my last. Carter glanced at her, amusement in his eyes. Welcome to humanity's fight, Zira. She smiled. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The battlefield was silent. Smoke drifted through the ruined colony, the scent of burnt metal and scorched earth heavy in the air. The HFY had been driven back, and the civilians were safe. But the cost of victory was still etched on every soldier's face. Zira stood near the wreckage of a HFY war machine, her breathing steady, her hands gripping her rifle. The fight had been intense, but she had held her ground, fought beside humans, not as an outsider, but as one of them. And now, it was over. For the first time, she wasn't just watching history, she was part of it. Recognition. As the team regrouped, Captain Carter walked over, his uniform stained with dust and plasma burns. He looked at Zira with something close to pride. You did good today, he said. You saved lives. Zira exhaled, finally letting herself feel the exhaustion in her muscles. It was different from what I expected. Carter smirked. Yeah, war always is. Zira glanced at the surviving colonists, men, women, and children who had been moments from death, now standing because of the humans' fight. I see it now, she admitted. Why you fight. Why you don't just run like the Valari would. Carter nodded. Because if we don't fight, who will? Zira looked down at the rifle in her hands. Once she had seen war as destruction. Now she saw it as protection. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for them. The message home. Back aboard the Horizon's Edge, Zira sat in front of a holographic communicator, her heart pounding. The encrypted signal was secure, but she knew this message would change everything. The face of a Valari council member appeared, tall, elegant, with golden skin and piercing blue eyes. Zira, the elder said, his voice carefully neutral. We feared you were lost. I'm not lost, Zira replied. I found something more important. The elder's gaze darkened. You have aligned yourself with humans. Yes, she said simply, because they're stronger than we ever understood. The elder frowned. Strength. The Valari do not seek war. We avoid unnecessary conflict. Zira clenched her fists. And what has that given us? Isolation. Fear. Running from enemies instead of standing against them. You risk exile, the elder warned. The council will not accept this path. Zira took a deep breath. She had expected this. I don't need their acceptance, she said, because for the first time in my life, I know what I stand for. The elder sighed. Then you have made your choice. The transmission ended. Zira sat in silence, staring at the empty screen. She had just cut ties with her people. And yet, she felt free, a human soldier. The next day, Carter called the crew together. In the middle of the briefing room, Zira stood before the assembled soldiers, humans who had once looked at her as an outsider. Now, they looked at her with respect. Carter stepped forward, holding something in his hands. You came to us as a diplomat, he said. You fought beside us as a warrior. He handed her a human military patch, embroidered with the insignia of the United Terran Forces. If you want it, Carter said, you're one of us now. Zira stared at the patch, a symbol of everything she had chosen. She took it and pinned it to her uniform. I accept, she said. The room erupted into cheers and applause. She wasn't just Zira of the Valari anymore. She was Zira of humanity. A new battle awaits. The alarms blared across the horizon's edge, breaking the moment of celebration. Incoming transmission. Owens called from the command console. It's bad. Zelfar reinforcements are moving toward another colony. Carter straightened. Then we don't have time to waste. Zira nodded, gripping her weapon. She was ready. No longer an observer, no longer just an alien diplomat. She was a soldier of Earth, and she would fight. For humanity, for a future worth defending.